Awesome. All right. Well, we are here with Matt Dewar. Do you go by Dr. Matt Dewar or just Matt? Or
That's fine.
fine. Okay, Matt Dewar. Very impressive write-up. I'm going to read what I found on you. So, Matthew Dewar is a professional educator and author working at the intersections of mindfulness, self-regulation, and emotional resilience. That alone is just for nearly 2 decades. Matt has served as an educator and well-being coordinator at the Lake Forest High School in Illinois. Vanna's entered the room. Oh, and they're cutting my grass outside. So awesome. So 2 decades as an educator, Lake Forest High School, Illinois. So you've trained in curriculum in social, emotional learning. You also have a doctorate from the National College of Education, a former president of the Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully, serves on boards and consults with school districts nationally on implementing mindfulness and emotional well-being programming. And then author of the Mindful Breathing Workbook for Teens, which honestly, I think probably every teen in America, and actually their parents too, need it. So just starting from there, wow. Just wow. I really like everything that you're going from the education side, and just I would love to hear from your point of view. Like, how did this evolve? How did you get into this space? What have you seen changing over the years? Let me grab Vanna. Hold on. Girl.
I have two golden retrievers under the age of 4, so I'm very familiar with Zooms being crashed by
Hey, there she is. Whatever. Okay, this is life. All right, so educating youth. So did you start off as like a high school teacher and then you just dabbled into, actually you tell me, this is your story.
Yeah. I think what's often common with people is that our life path is not this nice linear trajectory, that it's really, when I look back, I don't even know how I ended up where I am now because there's just have been so many stopping points and points of interest. And a mentor of mine over the years has always said to me, focus, Matt, follow one course until successful. I love that acronym for focus. Follow one course until successful, because I get so excited. I think the one common theme is I absolutely am obsessed with learning.
Yeah.
And I'm a learning junkie. I mean, I'm reading incessantly every night. I'm
as I say,
constantly.
I can tell by all the books in your background. Like,
yeah, I fell in love with reading in my late teens and always going back to school. And my wife has been so patient with that. I'm always like, I'm going back for another. She's like, why are we doing this? I'm just obsessed with learning. And kind of the common thread through that is I just grew up in a home that was really emotionally dysregulated. I always say, before the age of 10, my home was visited by death, divorce, and addiction. And so I grew up in a space that was a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But the one thing my parents did, and my parents were divorced, is I was lucky because I grew up in an affluent environment. And my parents had the sense of, whether it was conscious or not, of putting me into places where people who could do better than they could interact with us.
Oh, man.
And so I was able to just be in environments growing up where really amazing teachers and coaches were able to impact me. I have 5 brothers as well, and we've all had mentors and people along the way that was really cool. So I'm fortunate because I recognize in hindsight, knowing how powerful trauma is and how, when you experience trauma, but in an environment that lacks resources, that's a real hard thing to get past.
Yeah, I mean, let's unpack some of this, because you just gave some really beautiful truth bombs. And one, okay, are you the youngest or oldest of these five brothers, or in the middle?
So good question. I'm the youngest for my mom, but I'm
Okay.
in the middle for my dad.
Okay, so those are that can be interesting dynamics alone right there.
Yeah.
And then two, are any of them looking at what you're doing and be like, hey Matt, like why are you doing okay? Or like, what are you doing? Like, have they noticed like shifts in your life based on what you're
Um,
doing to like educate yourself, make sure you're okay, get your mind
it's
right?
Yeah, it's funny. So in my whole childhood, but especially my late teens, early 20s, I had horrible anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, just crippling. And that was really a big catalyst for I was becoming interested in like basically how I could fix myself.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the mantras that just spontaneously emerged during that time was, and it was really a lifeline for me, was what is this teaching me? What am I learning? And then how can I use this to help someone in the future?
Right.
And so those two thoughts, when things were really hard, were kind of like my North Stars, right? And so I got into all sorts of stuff, from looking at diet and certain ways of eating and exercising and various practices. And my family thought I was a nut job.
Of
They're
course.
all like, right? Like I was the one who was like, okay, what's he into now? Right.
Like, oh, that's just Matt doing his thing. Yeah.
But now so many of the things I talked about 20 some years ago, like it's like a norm in our family now.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Do you think you were the catalyst for that change? Like you were
Yes.
like the one to start to model it? And isn't it, well, my mind is literally going a million miles per hour, but what I love and what I really hope to make like this ongoing pattern is anyone that's doing anything remotely close to what you're doing and what I'm trying to do is, it always starts from within, because it's not like it's
100%.
not modeled. And I like to say I'm patient zero. So everything I've done and everything I'm teaching is because I needed it. Like I needed it. And I think what's beautiful is we can start to model to our families, to our friends, to our communities through our behaviors, through our actions, and then the change of those things when they start to see like Matt's doing really well, or like this used to really bug him. Or I remember my family would say, like, you interrupt people all the time. Like literally, it's like I was never stopping. It just go, 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 go. And that's what I think is the biggest part. And honestly, that's what I always want to ask anyone that's remotely close to this professional space, this personal, spiritual, whatever physical space you want to call it, physiological. Like, what was your path? Because the path is not, like you said, linear.
Yeah.
The path is up and down. And I'm a firm believer in therapy. My favorite therapist said, of course it's like this, because this is flatline. This is dead. Like, of course life's going to have ups and downs.
Yeah.
I love that you've been able to do that for your family, and for yourself.
I remember a psychology course, a personality psych course I took as an undergrad.
Yeah.
And the professor said, I said something to the effect of, I noticed the trend that many of the personality theories that we were studying seem to mirror the personal life and experiences and interests of the theorist.
Oh,
And
100%.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
brought that up, and he laughed and he said, all theory is grounded in personal biography or autobiography. And I was like, oh, wow, cool. And that was the first time I really heard it expressed like that as a young adult. And
say that again. I like that. So
he said, all theory is grounded in or rooted in autobiography. That we basically theorize our own experience and then use it as a heuristic for understanding the human condition. And I always say to my own students, when we're talking about these issues and learning to be vulnerable and how to tackle difficult emotional issues, that what is most personal is most universal. And that's kind of a riff off of different things Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, said. But when we really understand our own particular experience and kind of the conditions of what it means for us as individuals to be human,
Yeah.
instead of being isolated and instead of feeling like we're different than everyone else because we're not perfect or any of those things, we actually find that we have this common connection with all human beings, past, present, and future. And so there's something beautiful about that.
I love everything you just said. And one thing that really helped me get to this path of where I am now of teaching yoga, teaching breath work. I still have some speech therapy clients, but it's patterns. I just kept seeing all these patterns that it doesn't matter if the anatomy's good, if the emotional, like the mental's not there, it can hijack your breath. It can hijack your nervous system. So you've got to get your mind right. You've got to get your body right. So that bottom up approach, the breath work, yoga, whatever physical you're doing, paired with the top down. So your meditation, that, cleansing of your thoughts and just getting your head right. Really, we need both. And to me, it's the patterns of just the human experience that, you're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, but that's what makes us resilient. That's what helps us be okay when things don't go right. And of course, they're not going to go right because that's just the way it is. All right, switching gears, tell me right now, so your students, you're in high school, right, in Illinois?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you teaching them? What's your class course? And then how are you weaving the breath into that?
Right. So I'm only teaching part-time now, but I still teach. I teach in two departments. I teach in the English department and I teach in the wellness department. And so I teach courses like one's called Wellness for Life, which every freshman has to take at our school. And it's basically a year-long course combining the requirements for health education, the state requirements for health education and physical education, but it's doing so through the lens of social and emotional learning. Yeah. And so teaching students skills like self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, relationship skills, decision-making.
Where was that when we were in high school?
Yeah, I could have saved some trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. And so it's a really cool course. And then I also taught a course called Healthy Lifestyles, which is for older students, looking at how do you take many of the themes of wellness for life and then apply them into college and beyond, right? What are some of the core lifestyle design behaviors that really seem to work well? And what are the ones that seem to be really maladaptive? And then in the English department, I teach a course. My undergrad was a double major in philosophy and religion.
Oh, nice.
So I'm all over the place, I know. So I teach this course that's really the history of ideas. And first semester, and it's for seniors. It's a senior honors course. And so the first semester we look at the big ideas and big questions of Western philosophy. And then second semester, we look at non-Western philosophy. So we look at metaphysics, what is the nature of reality? So a subset of that, we explore philosophy of mind, free will, spirituality, is there a God, good and evil, all these things. And then the second big question is epistemology. What is knowledge? How do we know what we know? Who determines what knowledge is of most worth? Is knowledge something that's purely rational? Is it emotional? All sorts of things. So how do we know our world? How do we know ourselves? And then the last unit, which is my favorite, is ethics. And on what basis do we determine right from wrong? And then a subset of that, and the unit that the students always seem to get the most out of, is what does it mean to live a good life? And so just getting seniors in high school as they're about to launch into the rest of their life, thinking about, well, what does my best life look like? And how do I know? because there's something called affective forecasting, meaning how you predict what you're going to feel in the future and how certain outcomes are going to make you feel, whether positive or negative.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the research shows and personal experience when you reflect is how poorly we forecast how certain outcomes are going to make us feel. And so if I get into this best college that I'm stressing out about and even being self-destructive about in pursuing and trying to get admission to, or if I get this job, or if I do these things, then I'll be happy. And so we do this whole if-then exercise, if blank, then blank. If I get this, then I'll feel this. And so we make happiness conditional on these ifs. But how do we know that? How do we know that those ifs will actually lead to those emotional outcomes? And so the kids are like, whoa, and they start realizing that many of the constructs they use to guide their decision-making in the life they're trying to create are really not helpful or accurate. And so anyways, I'm rambling, but it's a really cool course and it has a ton of implications for well-being.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then embedded within all my English courses, I teach social emotional skills. We start class with breathing. They love to get me off track and be like, so tell us more about breathing. And then 50 minutes goes by and I'm like, okay, you did it again. And they're all laughing. But they're like, it's so cool.
You're like, I'll bite that. Okay. Well, what breathing exercises are you doing with them?
So, let me step back. I'm currently in a diploma program at the at the Professional School of Behavioral Health Sciences.
Wow.
That Dr. Peter Litchfield started.
Okay.
And so in the course of doing that program, I'm already a certified breathing behavior analyst. We use this machine, which is a CapnoTrainer.
Okay.
And it measures a number of things like your carbon dioxide levels. It shows you the waveforms of your breathing. I bring this into class and I show students how their breathing is impacted by different things.
Is this what because I've watched some of your Instagram stories. Is this what you've had hooked up to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Actually, just 10 minutes before we got on, I was in the sauna in the basement wearing it, I'm going to post something on related to it. But anyways, I bring this into class. But one of the core insights of the work that I'm doing now is that we always think about breathing as breath work is something we need to change our breathing consciously. That somehow you and I consciously know how to breathe better than our physiology, than the ancient mechanisms in our brainstem that have been dictating and are constantly measuring literally every single moment all of this biological data that's going on. And changing the neurons in your brainstem, changing the motor neurons in the musculature of your breathing to dictate breathing depth and rate. And we think somehow because we go to a yoga class and we're going to breathe for 5 seconds in and that, somehow we know better than that mechanism on how to breathe, even though we have no access to the biochemical composition of our internal environment or anything, right? And so the program has really just opened my eyes, and in doing the work with people now, it's just, I see how transformative it can be. Instead of thinking, how can I change my breathing? It's how can I become more self-aware and understand how I'm already manipulating and changing my breathing for purely psychological and emotional reasons. And what's the cost on my physiology for doing that? And so the CapnoTrainer becomes the access point for developing a self-awareness that we don't have because we can't see our carbon dioxide levels in real time. We can't see our heart rate variability. We can't see the electrical the electricity of muscular contraction and secondary breathing muscles, right? I was just working with a client a week ago who has had all these breathing issues. And so we put an EMG sensor on his left trap because he had a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
Right. And he told me he was 9 out of 10 relaxed. And we put the EMG sensor on, and on the screen, he's at 21 microvolts, which 5 microvolts is like the upper limit of where you want to be at baseline. So 3 is relaxed. And so he thinks 21 is normal, is relaxed. Oh, I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
And so we just, the technology allows you to develop this really nuanced self-awareness so that you can start interacting with these things and see how they create a whole cascade of symptoms.
Mm-hmm. I love, and also it's called, so that's called the CapnoTrainer.
The machine's called a CapnoTrainer. Yeah.
Looking that up later. I love that you were really hitting on the awareness, because that's something that I really strive for. It's like, just be aware. Be aware of when you're stressed, how are you breathing, and when you're breathing short or when you're breathing upper chest. So really what I'm trying to teach is just awareness in your patterns and giving you tools so that you can create the neural pathways so that you have at least a plan for when you are going into a stressful situation, a plan for when you have family Christmas dinners, a plan for something. So at least you give yourself something to help, and you practice it before. But you're exactly right. Like, the level of awareness of like internal bodily physiological response awareness of the average person is so skewed. It's so skewed. And actually, I was watching one of your interviews, and the thought that came to mind, and I wrote this down, is like biofeedback of the breath. Like, we need all these tools so that we can start to learn and understand how it feels, how it looks, what is it like come up as. But what I love is when you can actually show visuals of what's happening in real time, so that they can start to make those new connections of like, oh, this is this part of the body, and this is that part of the body. Oh, that's how I feel, or it's in my gut, or, you know, my chest gets tight. And it takes so much time to unlearn that these things are not disconnected. They are intimately connected, like the mind and the body and the body and the mind, and everything's connected to one another. And I really think that there's lots of options and lots of tools to help individuals make those connections, whatever route and path it is. So that's very neat.
There are a couple issues with self-awareness. One, we are inherently terrible. We're very unreliable narrators of our experience.
100%.
And then 2, we live in an environment that is so distracted and disconnected that it makes self-awareness, specifically interoception, this awareness of our physiology, it just makes it really weak. We just have a very weak self-awareness. And what often happens is that the behaviors we use to compensate for dysregulation start to create a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
And it's only when you get on to a device and you can see these measurements of your physiology in real time, where it's like, oh, when I breathe in this dysfunctional way, it might balance my chemistry, but it comes at a cost. And so then you teach someone how to actually breathe mechanically in a more proper way, and then it dysregulates them.
Because
they haven't dealt with the psychological or emotional trigger for the dysfunctional breathing in the first place. And so this is why the psychology piece of the physiology is so important, because the physiology and the mechanics are regulated by the psychological stimulus. And so a perfect example, and why I was in the sauna this morning with the CapnoTrainer, and why I've been doing stuff in the cold tub with people,
Yeah.
and measuring your PaCO2 is people think, oh, stress screws up your breathing. And it's
Okay.
like, well, that's ridiculous. No,
Yeah.
because if you only breathe correctly or functionally when everything's fine, that would make zero sense. So why is it that you can put people into highly physiologically stressful environments like cold and heat, and they regulate perfectly, but then you ask them to talk about their sense of self-worth, and all of a sudden their PaCO2 crashes?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, like
So
that's
beliefs, our
yeah.
beliefs about ourselves,
Yeah.
our beliefs about other people, our beliefs about the world, our physiology will organize itself around those beliefs. And that's why you have to understand what is the psychological stimulus for certain physiological responses,
And
like breathing dysfunctionally.
you're a therapist and a trainer and an educator all all in one. I heard this quote that the brain doesn't know if you're in rehearsal or reality. And that to me, I just like sat with that. And it made a lot of sense in the fact that the brain will perceive a threat, whether it's real or it's imagined, or if it's just been rehearsed. And I love that you're giving, it sounds like to me, the CapnoTrainer. The CapnoTrainer is like your tool for getting them back to baseline of like what is actually happening. Yeah. Like not what are we interpreting, not what emotions are we like attaching to this experience, but like what is actually happening. So it helps kind of bring us back to baseline.
Yeah. Often
yeah.
in landscaping, when you plant a tree, you'll hook in supports so that the tree can stay stable and grow roots. And when the roots are strong enough, then the tree is supported and you take the supports off and the tree can grow. I look at the technology like the CapnoTrainer and HRV and EMG biofeedback. These are supports in developing the roots of self-awareness. And when they take root, then the person can flourish and grow. And then the point is to not need them, right? But you need them at first because so many of us are just, we're so in the rabbit hole of our own head and experience, and everything's so close to us that we see right through it. And so what the technology does is it allows you to get a handle on it and start making really important connections so that moving forward, you can rely on that less and less.
Mm-hmm. I love that analogy. And what I think is so cool about that, I think the more I pay attention to nature and see how by design it is, and then realizing that everything and all the responses that we have, they're intentional, they're purpose, like there's patterns to all that as well. And if you just find something that works for you, find those tools, and then those are your supports, and then you can slowly take them away.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so tell me all like your handles, your website. What are you working on? What are you excited about? How can people find you, support you, follow you?
I'm on Instagram primarily at Dr. Matt Dewar. I think I always mix up my Instagram and my LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn. Instagram's at Dr. Matt Dewar, and then LinkedIn is Matt Dewar EDD. And then my website's mattdewar.com. Actually, my website will be launching probably early fall, a new website with some courses.
Oh, nice.
So I'm working on that. And then I'm working on a third book as well.
Third? Wait. Well, okay. I knew one, the Mindful Breathing Workbook for Teens. What's the second one?
Well, the first book was an academic book for graduate students in philosophy of education called Education and Wellbeing. And then the Mindful Breathing Workbook was the second one. And I'm working on a third. It'll probably be a workbook as well, but it will be focused on breathing as well, but for adults.
Oh my God. I love the idea of like, you get like a dysfunctional family, you got to like help the parents, and then you help the kids, or maybe you come in through the kids and then the parents. But regardless, Matt, thank you so very much.
Karen, thank you for having me.
For being my first breath to breath participant.
You made history.
Also, can I just say, like, I love these kind of conversations, and they're so hard to find because I think so many of us, well, I would say old parent, like that I had to, a lot of unlearning to get to, like, to be able to even be in this headspace to have this conversation. It's rare to be able to, like, start to talk about some of these deeper patterns and underlying philosophies and theories and change. And it's just, change can be scary, but when you realize you're supposed to change, you're supposed to evolve. So thank you for spending your time and your wisdom. And I'm going to turn off recording.
All right.
Let's see.